So, all right, we can start with the next one. So you just have to say the intro again, and then we'll be off and going.
But you're going to have to repeat it.
No, you did so good the first time. You have to remember
Pipe
it.
Band Pipecast, the premier pipe band podcast.
Yeah, good job.
And you have to remind him.
Seeing your t-shirt remind me.
Welcome back, everyone. We're here once again with Mr. Michael Henningsen, and he's going to tell us about what is a fife and drum band, why should we care, what makes them cool. So let's get right to it.
So what is your organization, Corpse Value Music Heritage, and what does it do?
Well, the P and the S are silent, like in swimming. It's core value, like the Marine Corps or drum corps or corps of musicians. It's like a body of is a core. And the values that one can learn by participating in an organized corps of musicians, it was tremendous for me as a young person growing up. My heroes were bass drummers and tenor drummers and deaf drum majors and people who helped me develop my character. And so Core Values Music Heritage is an educational nonprofit that uses the modality of core music, whether it's drum corps, fife and drum corps, and by the way, they are not bands. It's a fife and drum corps because they are soldiers, not musicians. You have a band of musicians, you have a corps of soldiers like the Marine Corps or the Army Air Corps. It's a body of. So one of the differences between pipe band and fife and drum corps is pipe band is about the music. Fife and drum is about what they did with their music. Giving the commands, leading the soldiers, having the order and discipline, being able to take commands, follow commands, being able to use a musical instrument as a means of communication. Many of the things are very, very similar. In fact, the Revolutionary War armies used the Scots Manual of Duty Calls, invented by the Scottish Highlanders. And the Scots used fifes and drums to make their duty calls. So you could be a fifer or a drummer in a Highland regiment, and that was different than the bagpipers. So fifes and drums go back, well, drums go back to prehistoric times, whenever somebody could hit on something and get people to move their feet, and they fought as an army. They used drums to give signals, to order the army's steps, and we have recorded history of drums through military use, all through recorded history. Hannibal crossing the Alps with elephants actually had elephant drums. And there are, the original kettle drums were designed to be mounted on horseback, and there are kettle horses that were bred just to carry the big drums. And so fifes were added then by the Flemish, the Belgian armies, because as warfare went from knives and swords and things that you poke people with and hack and scream to things that go bang, you had to be able to make noise that could be heard above all the stuff that's going bang. A drum can be heard over shouts and screams and moans and groans of people fighting, but a gunshot sounds an awful lot like a snare drum. A fife, which is a flute, but very high pitched, can be heard up to 6 miles and can play a variety of notes that can be used to name whatever call you have, whether it's reveille in the morning or go to bed or go fetch water, go swimming. They had one that was called Roast Beef of Old England. Guess what that was for? Lunch. You come and have roast beef. There was a go to church call. And so almost all of the European armies, including the Scottish Highland regiments, used fifes as their communication system. And then they would add a drummer, or later they would add musicians. First military marching band, although had clarinets and oboes and no brass. And they were Turkish. So even in the Civil War, you have certain regiments that wear Turkish outfits to honor the Turkish band that were started. So the idea of a band came afterwards. But fifers, much of the fingering is the same. I do play the fife. I haven't practiced for a while. I had some surgery that kind of handicapped me for a little bit, but one of the tunes that's very popular for fifers is the White Cockade. Does the pipe band play that? It's a Scottish march played on the bagpipes. In fact, Ace Caledonian Pipe Band's first name was the White Cockade Pipe Band. So a lot of the tunes, when you get to being musical with a fife, are the same tunes that can be played on a bagpipe. But then you also have sharps and flats and accidentals that you can do. So an army unit would have a duty drummer and a duty fifer, and it would be their job to report to the guy with the stripes and lashes. Stripes and lashes. By the way, Drum Sergeant Major's mace has chains and cords wrapped around it. They are to remind people of what the job of the drum major had been. Those are representative of the lashes that were given.
Don't mess up.
Don't mess up. Exactly right. So the fifers and drummers, one of the first duty calls they would hear is drummer's call. And they would have to report to the musician's tent to get their orders of the day. And the drum sergeant major would be part of the military strategy group because he had to be sure that he had enough field musicians to station with every commander so that all the commands could be given. And while in camp, that all of the field musicians knew all of the duty calls. Fetching wood, go fetch water, time to get up, time to go to bed, go swimming. One of the last is called the tattoo. Now we think of tattoo as ink on somebody's arm, and that's actually a Polynesian word, comes from the Maoris who would tattoo themselves. That's the derivative of that. But tattoo as a military call comes from the Dutch, a Dutch phrase, dodem tapto, which was a command that was given at the end of the day to send all of the field musicians out to march down the street. The phrase dodem tapto means turn off your taps. And it was to the tavern owners to turn the spigots off and send the soldiers back to camp so they could be sober in the morning. So tattoo, a derivative of dodem tapto, was the last call to round up the soldiers. So when we think of the Edinburgh tattoo, it's loud. It marches down the street. It's to get everybody back home safely. So fifes and drums partner with the bagpipe. You can't play them together. because bagpipes don't play well with others. They also don't pitch to the instruments, the other instruments. Fifes pitch to a standard 440A, where bagpipes do not. So you can play fifes along with small pipes and Uilleann pipes, but you just can't do it with a Great Highland pipe. So Core Values Music Heritage helped start the Fife and Drum Corps for our local muster grounds. And we tell the story of the field musicians who would have reported for duty, the young children like George Thomason, whose dad or uncle or somebody may be serving in the militia carrying a rifle, but the young field musician really was too small to carry a piece. To give you an example, I have with me a typical issue musket.
It's tall.
That's what I was thinking.
I'm about 5'10", 5'11" with these shoes. That extends well over 6 feet. It weighs about 30 pounds. A young soldier couldn't very well carry it, but he could carry a fife, a small tube with holes in it. Or he could learn to carry a drum. Drums were also used as flotation devices when you had to cross a river. And they were used as a temporary podium on the battlefield to court-martial somebody. They had drumhead court-martials. And all the rope that holds a drum together, the rope tension drums, well, you had to leave enough rope for a guy to hang himself. It's where the term give the guy enough rope to hang himself comes from. That's all the repair stuff you need to fix your drum is right there in the drum. Drums were also used to sound the rogues' march, to march deserters and court-martialees out of the fort. They also had the harlots' march. You can kind of figure what that was used for. To march the ladies out of town. So fifes and drums have a different history to them, but it partners with the military aspect of pipe band.
So, Adela, everywhere on the questions that I put fife and drum band, we need to change to fife and drum corps.
Yeah.
Because I now know that's offensive. I didn't know before.
It's not offensive.
It's just wrong.
But yes, it's just unlearned. I won't say you're ignorant, Kaylee.
It's okay. You can tell me I'm wrong. I don't mind. That's why we're talking to you, so we can learn.
But yeah, that's part of the difference. And partly the name of the organization was derived also from a book that was written by a former governor of Georgia who had been an officer in the Marine Corps. And he used the phrase core values, C-O-R-P-S, core values. He said, everything I needed to know I learned in boot camp. And he goes through many of the disciplines that one learns in boot camp that help you in life. And that's the second phrase, probably a segue into another question. What are the values of Core Values Music Heritage?
Mm-hmm. I thought so. I just want to say I thought it was always just a cute little play on words because I've always heard CORE values, like, oh, the core values of our company are this. Now we know.
Well, it kind of is a play on words, but it is saying this is where we specifically derive those values. Yes, they are the core, the center, the heart of what we do, but we get those values by participating in this body of people who are working together.
So do you want to answer that question now? What are specifically those core values?
I like to keep things simple. Core values are character, competence, and community. And our logo shows those things. Character, it has a crown. Competence, it has a music lyre. And community, it has hands very much like the clada, hands reaching out to each other. So the idea is the character that can be developed through the disciplines that you learn. As the governor of Georgia had put, learning to shine your shoes, to take pride in a job well done, even if it's something as simple as seeing yourself in a shoe shine. When I was in Navy boot camp, we had one of our recruits take the garbage can as his project. 3 o'clock in the morning, when somebody throws a trash can across your bedroom and you're sharing a bedroom with 80 other guys, that can is something more than just a can. It's an alarm clock, and it speaks volumes. And this one unit mate of mine took metal polish and shined that garbage can so you could literally see your reflection in the garbage can. And when we had a barracks inspection and the inspector noticed that and called it out, this sailor stood up and proudly, he had a sense of confidence then through what he learned. The skills that you learn of following orders, of learning to read music, of learning to play well with others, of learning to keep your uniform clean, to travel well, those character traits, maybe you can learn them elsewhere, but it's a whole lot of fun when you learn it with a bunch of other people, wear funny clothes, and travel around the world in the process. It just makes it fun, and you don't realize how your character is being shaped in the process. The competence part is also one of the things that's important to me. I remember a young high school kid who played violin in his school band, and he was really kind of reserved and kind of shy and introverted and had acne and all kinds of stuff, and was really introverted. And his big brother talked him into learning to play the drums and came alongside, and he began to play rudimental drumming like his high school band could never do. And he started holding himself a little taller. His skin got cleared up. He's your Uncle Dave. By becoming competent at something, becoming good at something, his whole demeanor, his whole person changed for the better, to become a more confident individual, to take the challenges that the world has, to be able to even overcome brain surgery. For a while, I was a band master with a Salvation Army band, and we had a young tuba player who was he was only in 8th grade, but he was nearly 6 feet tall and almost 300 pounds. He was not a small kid, and that made him incredibly self-conscious. He played the tuba for us. We sent him to Salvation Army band camp, and he came back, and as he sat there with his tuba, he held his head erect. He held his head, and he could look me in the eye, and he carried his horn and played with a new zeal. He had won Outstanding Musician of the Camp Award. Through competence comes confidence. Not a cockiness, not an arrogance, but when you can do something well and you know it, that's not pride or distasteful. It gives you the confidence in other areas. So character, competence, and community. As I said in the last show, I have dear friends in the piping community that I've known and worked with for over 50 years. 50 years. Other than family, maybe some high school people, even high school, yeah, those numbers are dwindling. Reuniting or rehooking up with people that I played with in a band in Washington, D.C. 40 years ago. We went to Canada and we took Canadian Champion Supreme in our drum corps, which was just a bunch of kids. We took outstanding drum corps of the field in Toronto. And now we get back together again as adults and where life has taken us. And even if we have differences of opinion, there is still a part that we value the relationship so much, we will overlook the opinion. We will understand, that's just how he is. But he's really a good guy. We can really disagree with people, but there is a bond of community. And so in what we do with our history, and there's a bond with history by telling the stories of history. I am not just a part of today's community. I'm a part of the community of 1760 through Lord Dunmore. I'm a part of the community of 1810 with Rufus Sowell. I'm a part of the community of 1864 with a family member who was a field musician with the Albany Regiment during the Civil War. And I found his documentation at Fort McHenry. My family name. I'm part of that community. And I can identify and understand the historical context better. So the essence of core values music heritage is using that core, that body of people, to impart values to the next generation to build community. I think of Mesa Caledonian Pipe Band. Chris has done an incredible job. Your uncle has just done an incredible job. The Hosick family, in keeping it together and being a backbone. Doris's sandwiches were a staple of competition days. To continue with any organization for 40 years. 40 years. I think of the influence of some of the people of history that I portray. Charles Cummings planted churches here in Abingdon that continue to this day, 250 years after he started the churches here. They continue. What a sense of community and what an impact those individuals have played in building the community where I live, the community where you live. So those are the values, those core values that we try to teach.
That's so nice. I'm remembering. So, and we've started doing kind of the sandwiches thing. Well, I mean, obviously now we're not competing, but the past few years we've done that where competition day, you don't have a lot of time to go stand in line for fish and chips, and also they're expensive. So, just bring some sandwich stuff. We put it out on a table. Everyone just goes to town. So that's
It's
That's
one of those little tricks that helps build community.
yeah, yeah. It's something as silly as just making sandwiches together.
Fife and drum has very much that same kind of personality. The era is different, the music is different, but there's lots and lots of crossover. One of the drummers that I competed with in Canada helped a number of fife and drum corps throughout Virginia and Maryland, and is a pipe band judge. Drum rudiments are drum rudiments. You have to tweak things a little bit here and there, but one helps the other and builds. So there is no tension between the two. They actually complement each other.
Yeah, I guess that kind of goes into one of our other questions. If there are, um, in what ways? Because I know you mentioned on the first time we talked to you that you were kind of using fife and drum to help build a pipe band drum section. Is there any crossover with that? Are they the same rudiments? How are they similar?
Rudiments are rudiments. Although Drum Corps International in the current list of rudiments is different. It has grown and expanded, and pipe band uses some new stuff because it's unique to the pipe band drum. I've actually got pipe band drum and a fife and drum. Pipe band tends to be more modern. They tighten up both heads. They use a Kevlar head on top to get as crisp a sound. Primarily to be able to do a crushed or a buzz or a tiz kind of roll, a roll that goes zzz, and not a roll that goes like machine gun fire. From a drumming standpoint, that's the big difference. The incorporation of closed rolls in contrast to open movements. So a drummer can, with work, change back and forth. One of the current drummers on the old guard fife and drum was with Radford University's Radford Highlanders, and I worked with him a little bit to modify the style, modify his fife and drum style to play pipe band. And his audition got him into the old guard fife and drum on the first try. When I started in it, pipe band drumming was way up there compared to regular marching band drumming, but they've caught up. Many marching bands and drum corps are using the same style drums, the Kevlar heads. I've even found backsticking back to the French in the 1700s. So a lot of things are not new, but they kind of fade away or lose popularity or are incorporated. So you'll find a lot of drummers who will do both. And it depends on what opportunity is what. So that the rudiments help with the fife and drum corps. You really start with the basics, and you have small pieces like the duty calls that you can use to teach a new drummer. Here, we want you to learn this duty call. It goes, here's the written part, and here's, so you can start with something that they're actually playing something useful right away. You don't have to start rudiment after rudiment after rudiment after rudiment to get the muscle skill. You can start off just doing a tap to keep cadence. So we can start a new drummer at a very basic level and get them in a uniform and get them on street sooner in fife and drum than pipe band. Once they've learned some basic stick control, then we can merge them into pipe band. And so a lot of drummers will do both. The current director of the Colonial Williamsburg Fife and Drum Corps was a pipe band drummer and a fifer. And now he plays small pipes and Uilleann pipes. So there's a lot of crossover in the styles.
Huh.
And since the regiments used fifers and drummers, it all fits together. Whether you want to do Scottish or English or German or whatever, you can be involved in a variety of outfits and still have some variety and similarity to it.
Cool.
There are some unique little things, more toward the Civil War and the War of 1812. There were periods of times when people held their sticks differently because of the way the drum hangs. A rope tension drum on a side sling like this hangs at a tilt. So the traditional grip developed because it's more comfortable. Well, now drums are flat. You've got them on a bracket that goes over your shoulder. So match grip works. During the War of 1812 and the Civil War, they wore the drums a little bit higher, and so would hold a drumstick more like a grip and play that way. So there are some little stylistic differences, but more similarities than differences. The flourish of the tenor drum still kind of remains unique to pipe band.
Yay.
There's a Norwegian bass drum flourisher that just puts every pipe band bass drum flourish to shame. The guy is crazy with long, hard bass drum beaters, and he's crossing over and behind his back and keeping a beat at 120 beats a minute. It's just incredible to see the flourish. Typically, fifes and drums don't use tenor drums, so no flourish. No
Oh. Sorry, I had to get that in there.
So I think you've been actually through most of the questions. How about number 7? Adele, you want to ask that one?
Let's do it. What is your most memorable moment or couple of moments from your drumming experiences?
What? When you've done something for 50 years, there are lots of them. One I kind of jokingly tell, but I wasn't the only one that had this experience. At the Alexandria Games in Alexandria, Virginia, at one of the games, we had a celebrity who was handing out the awards at the end of it. And she was married to Governor Warner, and that was Elizabeth Taylor. So Elizabeth Taylor was on the platform handing out awards. And that day I took tenor drum championship, open tenor drum, and went up to receive my prize and was kissed right there. Can you see it? Kissed right there on my cheek by Elizabeth Taylor. There were dozens of other guys that were kissed by Elizabeth Taylor too. So it wasn't just unique, but kind of memorable.
And you never washed that cheek after that, right?
Never washed that cheek. Haven't shaved it. That's why the beard. We were at a competition in Santa Rosa with Mesa Band. I had been in the Navy and had played with a band in Washington, D.C., and we had just started using Kevlar drum heads. And I'm doing something, and this drummer comes up, and he starts to feel the drum head, and he looks at it. He says, wow, that's really got a great sound to it. And can I try? So I hand him my sticks, and he's so fascinated on the drum head, and he starts to play on it, and he looks up. It was one of the drummers that had been with me in Canada when we took Canadian champions supreme.
Wow.
John Quigg was in language school in San Francisco with the Air Force and had come to the games just to watch. And he had never seen a Kevlar drumhead before. He and I have rekindled a friendship, and that's been one of the just wonderful community experiences to have somebody so fascinated in what you're doing, and it's somebody that you know but didn't recognize. Being able to play music has really opened a world. I did international public health as an occupation, and was involved in communities wherever I lived and worked, and being able to play other instruments as well. I practiced my Spanish by playing in a church music team, playing brass instruments. I couldn't understand what they were saying. They couldn't necessarily understand what I was saying, but music is universal. And through it, I learned a different way of reading music and a different way of playing. And that same sense of community was developed. I've sat down at drum sets. Another wonderful drumming story. I did a bunch of work in West Africa, and one of the days, one of the church services I was at was this church organization's International Men's Day. And the men's organization hosted the young boys organization. And the church had a regular band and they had a drum set. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if this boys group could have a drum corps? And at that moment, the back door opens up. They had actually disassembled the drum set and had strapped it on like a marching set and marched in to a marching cadence. And some of the guys had flags like a flag team, and they did a full drill performance with a marching band right in front of me. And I'm like going crazy, thinking, here I am in Africa, and I was just talking to the international men's director about doing exactly that, having a drum corps to draw kids together. While I was in Guatemala, one of our donors gave us quite a substantial donation, and with it I was able to buy a full drum line and a set of brass instruments for a high school band, and they had never had new instruments.
Wow.
And for this school to have a marching band with new instruments, they held themselves erect. They carried themselves a little different. There was a pride and a sense of accomplishment. And it was right as I was leaving and went back several months later, and they insisted on putting on a concert just for me.
Oh.
45 minutes, they played their entire band repertoire. And that was incredible to have equipped these kids and their teachers with the tools that they needed to pass on those core values and to build a sense of community. Small wonder I should try to start an organization to pass that on. It's meant so much to me.
Good job. So on that note, and I know it's gotten kind of weird with the COVID-19 situation and everything, but we need some good news right now more than anything else. What are you most looking forward to about music or drumming in general in the next couple of years?
Well, hopefully, individuals are using this time to practice. If you're getting paid unemployment, employ your time well, use it well. I know I have just been given the reins of drum sergeant and was given 2 medleys. So I'm learning to use ensemble to write the scores and improve my skills. Um, my hope would be that when things do open up, young people will see core music, not just for band geeks, but that it is a way to develop lasting friendships, to develop skills, to have physical exercise, to actually have fun that can last you the rest of your life. So my hope is that those of us who are involved in this don't stop, hone our skills while things are on hold, work on our skills, and begin to put the presentation together that will bring others in. Fortunately for the Mesa Band, you've got a critical mass. You have enough new students and enough new people that there are new folks coming and going all the time. Fife and drum doesn't always get that. The Williamsburg group has 150 kids involved, but they are paid to do their performances. It's really a military program. It's a training program. They earn rank by learning duty calls, by mastering their skills. And once they learn rank, they are given assignments according to their rank. They are given students to start. It's truly a youth-driven program. And it's got a waiting list that people sign on as soon as their child is born to get into this program. It's been around 60 years, and it isn't training fifers and drummers, it's training good citizens. And this downtime, I hope we are using it well to hone our skills, to become more passionate, to involve others in it. It would be a shame if it just kind of dwindled to the wayside. And that's part of you young people's responsibility. Us old guys, we're gonna pass away eventually, but it's you young people that are gonna have to attract the next group of young people and train them. And I know, Kaylee, you're doing that. Adele, I haven't seen you teaching any seminars. You're teaching too?
Yeah, I did some teaching. Yeah. And that's what this podcast is for too. It's about recruiting and getting the word out there and
very good,
spreading the knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, even among people who are not necessarily new to the pipe band world, there's a lot of people who just don't have the benefit of the historical knowledge or the resource or the, people around them. We've been very fortunate in Mesa that we have you and we have all the, really knowledgeable people who help educate. So we got knowledgeable people who know what they're doing, and then we've got young people who are excited to do it, and it's a great mix. And we want to share that.
And good family people to make people feel welcome.
Yeah.
And that's a thing, to encourage success, to get kids started as soon as possible. I've got one friend now, he's learned the bass drum in the pipe band, and his little 2-year-old, 3-year-old has already started wearing a kilt. So I know when Thomas comes of age, Thomas is going to have a pair of drumsticks in his hand.
Oh, yeah.
But it's going to take a few years.
Yeah, maybe a couple. All right. Well, I think that's all we got for you. Thank you, most of all, for being on our show.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for asking, really. The history part, pipe band will always be a passion, but the history part has really become a passion for me, and to be able to share it, it's a joy and an honor for me. Oh. Thank you for asking me.
No, thank you.
You. Now I have to schedule and do a live performance, a live presentation out in Mesa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring all your stuff.
Oh,
I mean, maybe don't bring the gun on the plane, but
I could, yeah, kind of, sort of. That's got some interesting stuff to it, also.
yeah.
Anyway,
Thank you again. Also, everyone at home, thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. Let us know if you enjoyed. I know you did, but let us know anyway.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this show, then support us on Patreon for exclusive content as well as the video of us recording this. We'll have special exercises we'll be writing as well as tips and tricks with tenor drumming and other instruments to come. Subscribe to us on YouTube for some tenor tutorials and possibly other tutorials later on. And like us on Facebook at Podband Pipecast.